I've never worked for a company that sells vitamins and mineral packages. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I don't have a dog in that fight. What have I got to gain by telling somebody something unless I'm just trying to educate them? A deficiency is when the animal does not have enough of a specific trace mineral or vitamin in their system to optimize their overall health and production. It's not uncommon for me to see 2/3 of the herds that I test have some degree of deficiency. Copper, as a general rule, somewhere between 60–70% of the cattle herds that I test across the United States have some degree of copper deficiency.
So that means driving down the road, 2 out of every 3 cows you see in most areas are not getting enough copper. That's costing money. Okay, with selenium, in some areas of the U.S., I see less than 5% of the animals that I test are deficient. In other areas of the U.S., I see over 70% of the animals that I test are deficient. And so it varies geographically. Zinc deficiency. I generally see 3 to 4% of the animals I test have deficiencies. But in some years, I'll see as much as 12 to 14% of the cattle that I test in those same geographic areas are zinc deficient.
I'm not saying it occurs in every animal within a herd. It may be 20% of the herd is deficient and the other 80% is marginal. But when I look at deficiencies, I look at it not from just the individual animal standpoint, but from the herd standpoint. You may have some animals that eat more supplement than other animals. First calf heifers may become more mineral deficient easier because they have a slightly higher metabolic demand. You still have a herd deficiency, even though it's not in every animal. I had 3 different herds in a 30-day period, all in the Dakotas. They were in known high selenium areas that were having calves that were being diagnosed with selenium deficiency, which didn't make a lot of sense. But in questioning the owners, these came out of drought areas. And it turned out they were importing all the hay that they were using to feed the cows from known selenium deficient areas. We were seeing selenium deficiencies even in an area where we notoriously saw selenium poisonings, where you have a high sandy soil with high rainfall. You tend to leach the chemical form of selenium, so your forages typically are going to be very low in selenium. In many of those areas, they know they have a selenium issue, so they supplement accordingly, but even with that, I'll still see close to 70% of the herds that I test at least have some degree of selenium deficiency within the herd. Vitamin A and vitamin E are fat-soluble vitamins that require intake of green vegetation. Where we see most of the vitamin A and vitamin E deficiencies are in spring-calving cattle herds when they had a drought the summer before. If you look at wild ruminants, deer, cattle, elk, buffalo, they typically have their offspring 30 to 60 days after spring green up. In our beef-producing cattle herds, we've often changed their calving dates to a time period that's 30 to 60 days before spring green up. From a true nutrition standpoint, the worst possible time of year to be dropping a calf unless you're supplementing to get around that. Environmental conditions can make a difference. I typically see more deficiencies with trace minerals in drought areas. If there's less overall groceries for them to eat, they're not getting as much from the natural diet. But if you look at supplementation plans, especially with loose trace mineral supplement salts, the limiting factor for those is typically salt and phosphorus content. But salt and phosphorus are eaten proportional to dry matter intake. So in drought areas where they has less overall groceries to eat, they oftentimes cut back on the amount of supplement they're eating at the same time, so they're getting less from the natural diet, but they're getting less from the supplement at the same time. So even with perfect products that you know work in a specific herd, it may not work every year if environmental factors change the way they intake the product. I was at NCBA a number of years ago, and I challenged some of the biggest producers in the country. I said, okay, it's about tax time. Go through and add up how many tons of mineral did you buy last year? Take that number times 2,000 times 16, that's the number of ounces you used last year. And then divide that by 365 days, that's the number of ounces per day. and then divide that number by the number of cows you own. That's ounces per head per day. And if you're feeding a product that's supposed to be fed at 3.5 to 4 ounces per head per day and they're eating 1, chances are it's not getting the job done. And the number of producers that followed up with me via email after that NCBA meeting and said when they ran the numbers, their cows weren't eating anywhere near what they were supposed to be eating. Oftentimes people only look at how much am I buying and how much am I spending. They don't put it back to how much am I using per cow per day, which is what makes the difference. Maybe the tub's too hard and they have trouble eating that much and they're only eating 1/4 pound per head per day. They're only getting 25% of what they should be taking in. Or maybe they're eating 5 pounds per head per day because it was too soft. You know, having a true understanding of what the cows are supposed to be eating versus what they are eating for all of your feedstuffs can be important, not just trace minerals. I've had producers tell me it's out there, if they needed it, they'd eat it. And that's not necessarily true. I've seen cows that were severely deficient that had a product in front of them that was 75–80% salt. They can't eat enough of that. And so even though it may have great numbers, if they're not eating enough of it, it's not going to get the job done. If you're using a loose mineral and it's to be fed at 4 ounces per head per day, so a 50-pound bag is going to feed 200 head one day. Keep track of it over a week to 2-week period of time. They typically will average a good intake if they're eating the right product that's formulated correctly. I do typically see a slightly higher percentage of severe deficiencies in small producers because oftentimes they're a hobby, not a business. They don't think about, I've got to get a calf out of every cow every year. But I see even severe deficiencies all the way from the backyard farmer all the way up to the, tens of thousands. You can't have one answer fits everybody. You can't have one answer fits every situation. And so you have to pay attention to the cattle and pay attention to, are they eating enough of the product? If they're not eating enough of it, it's not going to get the job done.